My name is Norman Jones, and I serve as the Dean and Director of the Mansfield campus of The Ohio State University. And I'm thrilled today to be joined by a group of luminaries who are going to share their experiences and talents with us. I want to tell you a little bit about this speaker series. It will feature alumni of our campus, faculty, students, local leaders, engaging and learning together. This first one will focus on forging your career pathway. Especially, we're going to be talking about the importance of building skills and developing your own career pathway. And we've got some amazing folks on the call today to share their experiences and insights. We have so much talent and really a wealth of experience in our community, on our campus, and among our alumni. I'm really grateful to everyone involved in this effort today to share their talents and experiences to help our students and make our entire community, both on campus and beyond, stronger together. After all, that's how we really grow, is together. And now it's my honor and pleasure to introduce one of the leaders of our community, Mr. Clint Knight. Clint is the Director of Workforce Development at the Richland Area Chamber and Economic Development. With more than 15 years of experience in management, recruiting, and staffing, Clint has a passion for employee development and education as a pipeline for the workforce of the future. He has a degree in music, which means very near and dear to my heart, and he's taken that background and turned it into a great career where he's got a unique perspective on identifying resources to obtain the necessary skills to be successful in a variety of settings. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Clint Knight.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be in the company of this panel. I want to mention really quick, frequently, people that I know, family, friends, ask, what is workforce development? If you're the director of workforce development, exactly what is it that you do? And I wanted to clarify that, talk about it really quickly. My job is to make sure we're making connections between education systems and the employers. So we make sure that you as students have the opportunity to meet and greet and know what careers are available to you and what sort of tools are available to you to get you to those careers. So I look at that in 3 different levels. I do that with grade school students, college students, and adults who are looking to learn a new skill and maybe go a different direction or raise their employment level. So that's kind of what I do with workforce development. We also have created a tool here in the region for you called Community Opportunity, which is one of the tools that we utilize to help you explore that and look at what type of businesses are here, what type of jobs are they showing, what are they posting, are they looking to fill, and create that tool for you. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It's www.communityopportunity.com. It's likely that you'll talk about that website in your classes, but create a profile there and peruse what we have to offer here in Richland County. So let's talk about our panelists. Our first panelist, Andrew Maynor, while completing a bachelor's degree in psychology from the Ohio State University, Andrew Maynor was very involved in academic research on the Mansfield campus. This helped inspire him to pursue a master's degree in labor and human resources at the Ohio State University. After finishing his degree, Andrew began working for Shell Oil in 2009. He has held a variety of progressing HR generalist roles with Shell, and in 2018, he made a career change and began his current role as a well supervisor in Texas. Brooke Miller. Brooke Miller attended the Ohio State University for 3 years before moving to California to pursue an associate's degree in television broadcasting from San Diego City College. When she moved back to Ohio, she decided to build a career in banking while completing a bachelor's degree in English from Ohio State and an MBA from Mount Vernon Nazarene University. Brooke has 10 years of experience in the banking industry, and she is currently a mortgage lender at Park National Bank. She's very involved in the Richland County community, serving on boards, committees, and service organizations. Matthew Failor. When he was a student at Ohio State, Matthew Failor took a summer job at a sled dog tourism company in Alaska. He finished his bachelor's degree in art in 2007, and he returned to Alaska to stay. Since then, he has raced in the Iditarod and other sled races as a musher. He also founded a sled dog tour company called Alaskan Husky Adventures and a kennel called 17th Dog with more than 50 dogs. Sarah Herrle. Sarah Herrle is a 2008 graduate of Ohio State who majored in business administration with a specialization in marketing. Her professional career path began in North Carolina in fall of 2008. Since then, she's returned to North Central Ohio to work with her hometown of Bucyrus. She's currently the marketing and project coordinator with the Crawford Partnership, Crawford County's Economic, Community, and Workforce Development Office. So let's talk about you guys a little bit. I've got some questions for you guys, and I think we start with Andrew Maynor here. Let's talk about why you originally chose Ohio State, Mansfield, and why you landed at that campus, Andrew.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in the area and attended an area high school, Ontario High School, and out of high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but knew that Ohio State, had a great brand and a variety of programs that it offered, and the OSU Mansfield campus for me was there and in a community that I knew well, and then going to the campus and going to the tour, was impressed with the resources that were available, the opportunities that were provided in terms of both things that allowed me to stay in Mansfield, but also to transfer to Columbus and pursue a variety of degree programs, and then having that brand that's associated and known worldwide, wherever you go. To have that and that alumni network to tap into were the big reasons why I went to Ohio State and the Ohio State Mansfield campus.
I have to unmute when I talk. So you found yourself at Shell. How did that come about? How did you make that career path? Did you make a connection at Ohio State, or when you were in Columbus? How did you end up with that company?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that I learned in the process of looking at grad schools, and I think this applies wherever you're at, is to look at what companies are recruiting out of there, what opportunities are being provided to the students that are there. And so shortly after getting to the Ohio State Fisher College of Business and the master's program, we began the process of going through interviews. Companies began showing up on location there. And so it was a great chance to get exposed to a number of Fortune 500 companies that presented opportunities both, locally in the Columbus and broader area, but also nationally. And so for me, that was certainly one of the things that was there that stuck out as far as, taking advantage of those resources that are there. And what companies and what opportunities are facilitated through the programs that you choose.
So the companies came to you at Ohio State.
Yeah, the companies came there. Again, it's one of those things where at Ohio State, I mean, you've got that happens where companies come and recruit from those programs, from the students and alumni that go out and do good things in the communities that their companies that they're part of, the communities that they're part of. And so yeah, they came to Ohio State, and having all of those things for the big companies where you can get engineers and business folks really kind of helps provide a number of opportunities for companies to come and get everything they need to staff their businesses.
So I failed to mention that Andrew's coming to us from Houston today. Most of us are here in the Richland County area, but we're gonna appreciate you joining us, and we're gonna come back to you in a few minutes, Andrew. I'm gonna turn to Matthew Failor. Matthew is coming to us from the farthest away, all the way in Alaska. So let's talk a little bit about, you grew up in the area here and landed at Ohio State. Let's talk about how you ended up in Alaska. Tell us how you forged that trail.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, like you said, I grew up in Mansfield, and I always knew that I wanted to attend Ohio State. I just didn't know if I was going to go to Mansfield or Columbus, and I chose to attend the regional campus in Mansfield. I think mostly due to how affordable it was, by allowing me to stay at home and take classes. That was kind of my avenue. And while at school there, actually one of my friends who was also attending, he had taken a job in Alaska during the summertime, and it was in a tourism venue, so to speak. To me at the time, that was something that I had never even thought about, was tourism, and let alone tourism outside of the state. When he came home, we got a chance to hang out. I think it was 2005, the summer of 2005. And he told me all about the tourism industry in Alaska and that maybe I should apply. And I thought it would be a perfect fit, you know, going to school for the calendar year and taking a summer off. I didn't really know anything about Alaska or sled dogs, but I just decided to take a chance, figuring that I would eventually just move back to Ohio and have a cool story for the summer of 2007. And when I took that job, I realized that it opened up a lot more doors, and there was just some opportunity up there. So when I came back to Ohio State, I knew I wanted to finish my degree, but that tourism industry that I never thought about kind of was just tugging at me a little bit.
So through friends or network that you created in college, you ended up moving to Alaska and then coming back, and then you returned to Alaska. Is that how that happened?
Yeah, that is correct. So when I first started, it just was going to be a summer job to kind of help fund, you know, my college education. And yes, through students at Ohio State, that led me to find this job in Juneau, is where I started, the capital here in Alaska. And I full well thought I was just going to return home and kind of blend some of the things I was learning in Alaska and start my life back in Ohio. But I don't know, maybe some of the things I might touch on today is following my passion, but maybe not missing out on a lot of opportunity too at the same time. So I kind of had what I really wanted to do, but there was other things going on. So I just called it an audible.
It's fascinating to see where college takes you, the connections that you make, and the things that you learn, and where you end up. So let's talk about that with Brooke. You started at Mansfield, and then at Ohio State, and then ended up moving out to California. So let's talk about your path that way, and you know, how you ended up at Ohio State Mansfield to begin with.
Yeah, so when I was doing tours of different universities and trying to figure out where I wanted to go and spend time away from home, I didn't know, I wasn't pursuing anything specific. I was still open to plans and maybe things that I wanted to do. But when I took that day with my dad and we went down to OSU Columbus and I walked across the oval, I just looked at Dad and I said, this is it. This is here. This is where I'm going to be no matter what. And I said, I don't know why, it just feels like home. And, you know, so we sent everything in and, you know, I thought my grades were pretty good. I was a pretty smart kid in high school. And they gave me the letter for Mansfield. And I said, you know what, that's not so bad. I can go home for dinner every day. It'll be fine. But I still wanted that experience of being away. So if anybody knows where Plymouth is, they'll know that I was really only on one side of the county to the other. So I didn't really go far, but I did get to go away. And so I thought, well, you know, I'll go to Mansfield, I'll get my grades, and then I'll get down to Columbus where I really wanted to be. And I got to Columbus and I loved it. I had the best time. I had the best roommates, and I wouldn't trade a single day of my time there. And then after I went to San Diego, there was an opportunity that presented itself, and I was going to get to go to broadcasting school and, you know, hopefully make a name for myself that way and maybe become the next Erin Andrews, who knows. And I just had to chase that dream. So although I wasn't done at Ohio State yet with my degree, I was 3/4 of the way done. I decided, you know what, school's always going to be here, and this opportunity is right in front of my face and I've got to go. So I took that, went to broadcasting school out there, and I got to work, do some live street reporting. I also got to do some anchoring, which was a huge deal. You have to audition for that. And the fact that I was the newest person, wasn't from around there, didn't have any connections, and the fact that I nailed some of those anchor positions was huge. So to me, I'm thinking, okay, I'm a little homesick. I'm ready to go back to the Buckeye State, and thinking I've got some big broadcasting stuff under my belt here that I'm going to take back home and use. Well, I would have had there had been any jobs open. There were none. So we get back home, and I thought, well, I'll try banking for a little while until something pops up. And a lot of times the way it works in broadcasting is you got to hold a job for a while, and then when the one you really want comes along, then you got to jump on that when you can. And I was I was on kind of like waiting. They had my name in the pool, and they had my tape and everything for the young people. I guess that'd be my digital resume, my tape. And was just waiting for the call. Spent my time in banking, and then finally did get the call. But at that point, I had made a name for myself in banking and decided to stay in that. So now I keep a little bit of my hand in broadcasting here locally. I host the hearing show online. That's just an online show now. It used to be on WMFD. Now you can access it through streaming. And then I also am starting to do a little bit with the OH Report as well. So still fully invested in banking, but I like to keep my hand in broadcasting since Ohio State gave me all of those gifts. So finished that degree after we moved back home, and I was an adult, and I chose to finish that at Mansfield by choice that time, and not because they told me I had to.
And so you came back and got it done.
Yeah.
It's that's always interesting with, the adventure in college. Dr. Jones mentioned I have a music degree, and I ended up going back after going to 5 universities. I went back and got my degree where I started. So it's an adventure. So let's talk to Sarah Herrle. Sarah, you attended OSU Mansfield, and let's talk about how you landed there and where it's gotten you at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. So I actually started at another state university, and I want to say, from what my memory tells me, within a month or two, I had already applied to Ohio State to switch schools. And I chose Mansfield for a couple different reasons. It was close enough to home. I grew up in Bucyrus, but it was far enough from home that I kind of had that little bit of independence. They had apartments near campus, so I could live there and not have to move back in with mom and dad. And I could complete most of my degree as a business major on that campus. So I did 2.5 years on the Mansfield campus. I didn't think I had a lot of interest in main campus. I had grown up in a small town, but when I got down there for my senior year, I loved it. So it was a really good mix for me. I met and made a lot of friends on the Mansfield campus, one of which who became my roommate in Columbus. So that was a good connection. I had a chance to get to know somebody, and I didn't have to live with someone that I wasn't familiar with. So that is kind of how I got to Mansfield. I graduated in 2008, and my cousin, who is my age in the Carolinas, had also graduated. And she's like, hey, I'm going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was like, I don't have a job yet. I'll move to Charlotte, North Carolina. So I went down to the Carolinas and spent roughly 6 years down there. Got my first, that's where I launched my career. I worked at a few law firms, and using those skills to transfer jobs. So I have had quite a variety. I have been a bankruptcy law legal assistant, construction legal assistant, nonprofit, marketing, front desk manager, customer service rep in a call center, corporate services and event planning, back to nonprofit work. So I kind of just took off and tried different things until I found something that really grabbed my attention, which is working in the nonprofit field.
So, and I have the opportunity to work with you frequently. So I know that that business and marketing education that you're utilizing on a daily basis. Can you talk a little bit about any advice that you would give a college student right now who's in their first or second year on the Mansfield campus when it comes to exploring where they're going to go, exploring what they may have already identified their pathway or their career, but making those decisions early about how to head that direction and stay focused.
Yeah, so I have two real key pieces of advice that I would give current students. One is map out your own path through college, those prerequisites that you have to have, but also work really close with your advisor. Had I done that a little bit more, I would have learned that I was only one class away from being an econ minor. Don't know what I would have done with it, but I would have definitely gone ahead and pursued that. So I wish I would have reached out and made that connection sooner. The other thing I would recommend is I waitressed in the summer, which was great, good customer service skills. You learn a lot of things doing that, but I wish I would have done an internship. I think it would have helped me figure out a little sooner, a little faster, what I like to do, what I don't like to do, what it's really like to work in an office, because obviously as a waitress, it's a very different environment. So those would be two key pieces for current students. The internship, I don't think it needs to be like some glamorous, thing, but if you have some local opportunity or something, I would highly recommend it.
So let's go back to Andrew. Andrew, did you participate in an internship when you were doing your coursework at Ohio State?
Yeah, so in undergrad, I actually had the chance to go to the main campus and participate in a summer project that was essentially called Research on Research, where we looked at a professor's research. So I was really close with Dr. Dennis Schaefer on the OSU Mansfield campus, and got a chance to know his research and develop a website. And so that program was sort of an internship that was offered through Ohio State, and one that I found to be quite good and useful, just in terms of establishing some exposure to other fields, the students in other fields. But yeah, like as Sarah mentioned there, you start getting that transferability of skill set where you're looking at different problems, different ways to approach those different problems, how to interact with different groups. And so I think that for me was a good one. In graduate school, I did have a chance to intern with Shell as well. And so after my first year of grad school, came here to Houston to intern with Shell, and then that turned into a full-time offer. So certainly, whether it is the opportunity to go and to get some exposure to a field, and maybe you find out that, hey, I interned here and this is awful and this is not the path I want to go down, then you can eliminate that before investing more time as you get a bit more familiar with the work. Or it can translate into a full-time opportunity, and even if it doesn't do that, can lead to a network of people who are in a field that you're in or have a desire to be in. So I think those things are really, really nice if you are able to get the opportunity to pursue an internship.
Something Sarah probably has heard me say a lot is that it's important to learn what you don't want to do just as much as it is to learn what you want to do. Yeah. And internships, and Sarah kind of said that. I mean, internships and the work experience is important to allow you to do that. So let's go back to Matthew. Matthew, talking about transferable skills. So you have an art degree. I've got a music degree. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience meant for what you're doing now, and what type of transferable skills that you learned through your experience here at OSU?
I use my photography degree every day with what I do. My wife and I launched our business just last year. So we own and operate our sled dogs here, and we provide tours every day for our guests. We take them out and teach them how to dog mush and kind of show them our Alaskan lifestyle. But at the same time, we're promoting our business and taking pictures of the dogs, building a website, promoting on social media, and with how visual things are and how connected we are nowadays through social media and the internet. I use my photo skills all the time, whether it's taking videos or just still pictures, and kind of choosing I mean, I can't stop looking through the lens of photography. That's my passion is art and photography, which was fueled through Ohio State. But what do I choose and how do I choose to show it every day with the dogs? And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers that question, but it's something that I use all the time, whether I really kind of know it or not. Every time a dog team here leaves the yard and goes on their adventure, we're out there filming them and then dropping it through the iCloud to them later on after the tour. And so using my art skills in that sense, we do a lot of creating. I do a lot more work with my hands through carpentry and building and fixing sleds. We build our own sleds. Art is something that you can't really define. As soon as you try to define it, it's out of the box. So I'm using art all the time by just building and creating. And a lot of that goes back to a guy named John Thrasher and my photography professors at the Ohio State, Mansfield and Columbus.
So it's fascinating to see that transfer of skills. If you are, most people when they talk about your business are going to focus on the dogs, but you're specifically talking about the marketing of the business and telling your story, which is crucial. So if any of the students wanted to check out that website, what is the website that for your business?
So our website is akhusky.dog. I had no idea that you could have a .dog. It's not .com. So it's akhusk.dog. And my wife Liz and I, like I said, we raise our own dogs. We have a kennel of 50 and we're located just north of Anchorage. And I never really realized that growing up in Ohio that sled dogs can operate in the summertime. And through my connection at Ohio State, which pushed me to Alaska, I learned that, dog mushing doesn't really stop. It's just on a smaller scale. It's a lot like a basketball player or a football player. They have an off season and they can't just sit on the couch and not do anything. It's the same with our athletes. So we operate sled dog tours every single day. We can take people out in the summertime on sleds that have wheels. They're these really cool carts. And so people get a small taste of what we do in the Iditarod here at our home. And so we literally open up our home to people. And it's from the top down, we're making decisions on everything. So I didn't realize I wanted to be a small business owner, but I do realize now that was my dream all along. I love what I do, and the dogs and my art passion is kind of bundled all into that now.
That realization comes through the journey, I guess. So speaking of the journey, Brooke, I want to get back to you. What would you say to a student who might be similar to your situation, started here, grew up in the area, started school here, went out, moved away, whether it's to main campus or to another state, and then maybe interested in coming home. What drove the decision to come back around to the area where you grew up when you came back from California?
I guess one of the things that helped me out the most in life that I didn't realize was going to be a huge factor was having a network of people. And I built that through my banking career. I didn't have that in California when I was there. Everything was just on such a huge scale, which isn't a bad thing by any means. But one of the things that I really appreciate from having that large scale of Columbus to an even larger scale of San Diego, which is in broadcasting is the number 6 market in the country. So it's huge. I might have only known 1% of the people in my field. So it's kind of hard to get somebody to help you out for maybe a project or a promotion, or to think of you when something comes along that you might be perfect for. Where here, I don't work at Ohio State, I work in banking, but because we run in the same fields, he knows what my passions are. He knows what my plans are today, what I'm working on. He knows what my plans are for tomorrow, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. When you have that group of friends and that network, that you've built in a smaller community, the doors are always going to be open, because he can hear someone say something 5 years from now and say, you know who would be perfect for that? Brooke Miller. You need to give her a call. So knowing that this network that I've built here is a huge safety net for my own future. I didn't know that that's what I was moving back into, but that's definitely what I created, and just have really taken advantage of ever since I got home, that I didn't have there. And I had to claw for everything I got when I was away. And that gets very exhausting very fast. And here it's more natural, it's more organic, and it seems like things are quite a bit more purposeful with the work that I'm doing.
So that network, the network of home, or the network of where created your college experience, and maybe the sense of community is definitely a plus when you're looking to move on with your career. Well, I really appreciate you guys telling us a little bit of your story, giving us some advice, and talking about what OSU has meant to you. I think now we have some time for questions, if that's correct.
That's right. I was going to invite any of our viewers to submit questions, and any of the panelists could answer them. Or if you have a question for one specific panelist, you could ask that too. And but while we wait for your questions, because I'm just so fascinated by all the stories I've been hearing, I've got some follow-up questions I want to ask. But viewers, please send in your questions in the chat feature. I believe you can submit those, and we can ask them of the panelists. But as I was listening to all of your stories, I kept hearing, I mean, some of the things we've touched on already is a bit of the serendipity of these careers, of, a friend or a family member, sounds like maybe a cousin is moving to Charlotte, or somebody's, has some connection to Alaska and they were off to Alaska, or an opportunity arises in San Diego. And Andrew, I bet you didn't expect to end up in Texas, right? There's a lot of that sort of, it's not easy to plan. Clint, as a music major, probably never guessed he would end up in workforce and economic development, but he's doing this great job in it. We're so lucky to have him. And one of the things we see among our students on campus, I certainly felt this way as a student, is some anxiety about that kind of thing. You want to tell people, because you guys have delivered these great messages that, like, look, do some internships. That's a way to get exposure. Don't just do the jobs that you already know, like open yourself out. And it doesn't have to be something you love, right? It could be something you realize you don't love. We talked about networking, which I think is really important. Talked about transferable skills. All those things are great, but I wonder if y'all would be willing, any of you, to share a little bit about kind of managing your own emotions, your own, I mean, there's a little bit of anxiety, right? As you're trying to find your way in life. And I've been there too. One of the things that I can share with everybody as now a 50-year-old, I am officially, in the second half century of my life. It doesn't really entirely go away, right? I mean, it might for some people, but I never expected to be doing what I'm doing now. And I, in some ways, that can be anxiety provoking later. It can also be a fun thing. But I wonder, thinking back to yourselves as college students, would you give advice to yourselves, to your friends, to the folks who are college students now, about how to manage those emotions, those kind of the worries that we all have about what is my future?
I'll jump in there. One of the things I would recommend to deal with the anxiety will never go away, at least it hasn't 13 years in here to working, is don't always get like held up on the job title as you're like looking for things. Like really dig into that job description, especially at a smaller organization. You might get to do a variety of things, which makes the day a little more interesting, and it'll help build your skills. So if it isn't exactly what you want to do, you've gained some new skills that you can carry forward with you. And look at the big picture and listen to your gut. Those are my other two things. So what are you doing day to day? What are your hours? What's the benefits? And if you're in an interview and they say something like, no, this is the job, there's no room for growth. And you're going, not really, like, listen and trust yourself. And and it'll all come together. Like you said, there's a chance in California. I got an internship. I'm in Texas. I know somebody who worked in Alaska. It's just funny how it all comes together. Not so funny in the moment, but afterwards when you look back and you can kind of connect the dots.
Thanks for that, Sarah. That's awesome. Go ahead, Brooke. It looks like you're gonna.
So you said that, and I instantly went back to being 21 in a very small apartment in California. And all of my friends were graduating that month from Ohio State in Columbus. And I was in this teeny luxury apartment, which was not luxury at all. It was actually miserable. And I was working a job I didn't like. And, I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And I had left OSU to go pursue this opportunity. And all my friends were walking across the shoe, and I wasn't. And I was so hung up on being on a different path that I almost stole my own joy from the moment and everything that I was doing at that time, and all my friends kept saying, wow, like you're doing everything I wish I was doing. But at the same time, I'm like, you're doing the one thing I wish I was doing. And I know that is so hard, and it's so much easier said than done, but just to appreciate where you are at your time. And then I graduated with my bachelor's when I had little kids, and I never expected to be an adult graduating with a bunch of younger people. But I really appreciated that day when it came.
I love that. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on this question. Andrew, you just unmuted.
Yeah, so I think there are some things that were kind of common across our stories, if I look at it, which was, being open to the experiences and those conversations. I think a lot of times someone will say something, and it's kind of taking that uncomfortable step to inquire more and find out more about what's there, whether it's going to Alaska or taking the risk of moving to North Carolina. Those things are there. The other thing is believe in yourself. I think there is that feeling sometimes that we can place limits on ourselves, that I don't have the experience needed for this. I don't have the life skills for this. No one in my family has ever done this sort of thing. How can I possibly do this? So I think just that knowing that you can do it and that you can figure it out, because nobody comes into the world with experience. Nobody comes out knowing exactly what they want to do. And much like, Dean Jones has said here, all of us have that kind of anxiety of along the way, like, is this what I want to do? Is this really, where I'm at? And I'd say the other thing is take comfort in knowing that the reality is what you start out doing is not what you'll be doing forever. Even if it is something that you look back at and say, man, I really loved that experience and I could have stayed doing that forever. The world keeps changing, and our skill sets keep having to adapt to the world as it changes. So I think that's something there. So much like what Sarah said, look to leverage those skill sets that you attain along the way and those various paths, because you never know how they're all going to come in and play together and what you ultimately end up doing.
I love that. Thanks for that. And Matthew, it looks like you unmuted as well.
Yeah, that's great advice, Andrew. Andrew and I went to college together at Ohio State in Mansfield, and now we're both kind of branched out in Texas and Alaska. So it is kind of neat to see. I mean, we have students, thousands and thousands and thousands of students, and where they're going to scatter and go and take Ohio State with them is pretty neat to think about. When I first attended Ohio State, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was very nervous. Like you alluded to, I had a lot of anxiety, because you hear, you get your degree in 4 years, and I kind of felt like I had to do that. But halfway through, I changed my major, and next thing you know, it took 6 years for me to get a 4-year degree. I went to school for part-time for a couple quarters back when we were on quarters. And it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just keep going and meet new people, make connections, join a club, get on an intramural team, get an internship. There is so much opportunity at your disposal, but sometimes the opportunity is the other direction. You think you're going this way at Ohio State, but there's so much at your, at your immediate beck and call right there. You just have to kind of keep your eyes open and be all right with changing and adapting, like Andrew said.
I love that. I love that. And I think our last question, we have a great question, as you may have seen from one of our participants, but I want to tie it together because we're talking about balancing that view when you're in it, right, with the long view, where we're all trying to plan our lives. And, you know, we do have to make those decisions that have long-term impacts, and yet you can't really know everything. So you try to enjoy it as you go. Is there a class that you took in college that you didn't think very much of at the time that now you're like, ooh, that was actually helpful?
I have to jump in on this. So I was never like a history buff at all. And you could turn on a documentary and put me to sleep. I took history of Ohio at OSU Mansfield. And I thought like, oh, this is just fulfilling a requirement. I can't drive down the highway now without being like, hey, do you know what that is? Do you know? And then everyone in the car with me has to be like, oh, wow, Brooke, tell us for the next 20 minutes about why that place is important to the history of Ohio and why it matters today. And I have a soul that belongs in New York City. And I cannot tell you how much of Ohio and our Indian heritage and all this stuff, and all of it just translates right to New York City. So my poor girlfriends that have to ride in the car with me on those girls' trips to New York have to hear all about the history of Ohio class I took.
I love that. That's awesome. Anybody else want to talk about a class that you took in college you didn't think much of at the time, but it's turned out to be useful?
I'll jump in on that one. So I might be mixing two classes together because they were in the same room on the Mansfield campus. But one was, I remember making our own website. Cool. I don't have any interest in computers. I absolutely love computers now. I do our website. I do a lot online. So that was something. And then the class on like Excel and some of those things where it just makes your day-to-day easier and you can make the computer do the math for you. Two classes where at the time you're like, kind of like Brooke said, you're marking it off the requirements list, but in reality, it does matter down the road or comes in handy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I think I've got a couple classes that stuck out as well. So one was research methodology, I think in psychology, and then took that in grad school as well. But in that class, I mean, it really is just advanced problem solving. And I think wherever it is, whatever it is that you're doing, understanding how to approach a problem, how to define a problem, how to then look at different methods for solving that problem is ultimately fundamentally what you're doing in any higher skill job that you find yourself in. And the other one for me that sticks out, to be honest, is a intro to Shakespeare class. And I think for me, it was just one of those things that's funny. Like, I'm not an English person, but I got a lot out of the class. And I think for me, there was this initial being closed down to it of like, I'm doing this as a requirement, got into it and really had to suck it up to just get through the class, but then found myself coming to enjoy it. And I think that's one of the things that is there so often in career or whatever, you know, when that first bit of adversity strikes, there's this tendency to kind of shut down and withdraw. But I think in that moment, I really learned to, you know, step into it and embrace it and really pour yourself into it. Even if something doesn't feel natural, sometimes it can lead to finding a passion or finding something that you're in fact interested in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Matthew, did you want to chime in? I have one last question.
Oh, there was several classes that stood out. I took African American Film Studies class, which was really intriguing, and the professor kind of opened me up to a lot of things that I never thought about. I took a theater class, so had to get on stage and act a little bit. But I think maybe one of the ones that I didn't have to take that I did take was a self-defense class, you know, in the gym. And it was something that I never thought about taking that at school, and I've never used it since. But you know, those are opportunities that are available to you, and don't be afraid to try something new.
I love that. We have a self-defense class running right now. All right, so instead of me going on, nobody wants to hear me do some conclusion, but I am going to thank you all in a few minutes. But somebody asked, parting words. what advice would you give to somebody who is a brand new graduate of Ohio State? Go ahead, Sarah.
So one of the things that I have learned, I've obviously changed careers and jobs quite a few times. Don't get hung up in the interview process. And I'll give you two examples. One, I had driven from Charlotte to Columbia, South Carolina to interview at a different law firm when I switched to bankruptcy law. And the first interview was maybe 10 minutes. And he said, do you have any experience in bankruptcy? And I said, no, just what I've read on your website and the fact that I've worked at another law firm. And he said, okay. And he asked me one more polite question and that was it. And he said, second interviews will be next week. We'll be in touch. But not that I had one, just what the process was. Okay. So when I leave, and I'm like, cool, that was 10 minutes. There's no way I got this. And then the week went by and I didn't get the second interview. Well, as it turns out, the gentleman who owned the law firm was just busy as the owner of a law firm with multiple branches, and it got delayed a week. Had nothing to do with me. So I did end up interviewing. I got the job. And later on, I remember joking with the first attorney and saying, it was like 10 minutes. And you asked me what experience I had. And I gave an answer and you kind of said, okay, thank you. And he said, oh, that's because I had already made up my mind that you were it. I just didn't really need to talk to you anymore. So both of those things, 10 minutes and then not hearing back. So just try to be patient in that interview process. It doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go.
That's great advice. I like that. Anybody else with parting words for a recent OSU graduate?
Can I spin this a little bit? And okay, so one of the biggest things that I like to tell young people is, if you know what you want to do, which I did not, most of us didn't, but if you are one of those that you really are sure, even just field wise, like you're like, I know I want to go into banking or whatever it is. My biggest advice is let them pay for your school. Take it slow, get in, get the benefits, go full-time, whatever it is they want you to do. Take your classes on a flexible schedule. Don't get hung up in doing like the 4-year in and out thing. Get in, get your benefits, let them pay for your school. I have 3 degrees and I'll tell you, I owe less than $10,000 on all of them because I let my employer pay for my school. Let them pay. Even if it takes you, I didn't get my master's until I was 34. That's okay. I have no debt. And this entire time I've had healthcare. I've had, I have a 401k that is already built up. All of these things that I've gotten, I got to build a house when I was very young because I had a full-time job. So although I didn't get my 3 pieces of paper until I was older, I don't owe hardly anything on them. So that is my biggest advice. If you think you know what you want to do, let them pay.
That's fantastic. That's right. And it's not a race, right? There's no badge you get for getting there faster than anybody else, and you can get other things along the way. Matthew and Andrew, any last words to a new OSU graduate?
I'll go first because I feel like Matt's got the most interesting story here. But you know, for me, I think it is just like I said. I said this earlier: being open to experiences and to your network and leveraging what's there. I mean, at Ohio State, we've got 400,000 alumni, you know, across the globe. You know, so if there's a city that calls, an industry that calls, whatever it is, take advantage of, you know, the alumni, you know, network that's there and find people in places because, you know, everybody in the world, in my general view, wants to help. And so, you know, in particular, you know, I've had a number of Ohio State people reach out to me throughout the years and my time in Houston. And it's, you know, formed a relationship. And the other thing as well is, you know, kind of like was said earlier, you know, don't get hung up in the title or what it exactly is, but look at the experience that is there and what you can get from it. Because again, I don't, nobody begins, and I think you've heard this in all of our stories, no one begins in the field and ends up doing that exact same thing that they were. So it's all building and you know, much like the title of this, you've heard our paths, but ultimately you're going to forge your own path. And the only thing I can assure you about that is it's not going to look like what you think it is sitting there today.
That's excellent. And it's such an important note. You've sounded many of them, but the people actually want to help. You know, I won't give the time of day to certain vendors trying to sell me stuff, but I will always give time to a student or a young person who's trying to find their way in a career. Matthew, what are your parting words for an OSU grad?
As someone that just graduated Ohio State, I would say don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call that person that you want to work for. You know, as a business owner or a manager, if I have someone that's eager and driven and hardworking, and they're ready to work, just don't be afraid. Don't settle. Ask for that pay raise. Ask for, you know, that job, because if you're ready and driven, you will get hired. But don't just settle. You know, if you're willing to cross state lines or city lines, and there's so much opportunity, just pick up the phone and tell them why they need to hire you. Yeah, don't settle.
I love that. This has been such a weird time for our country, but it is a time of great opportunity in addition to a time of anxiety. There's so much demand for good workers, good employees. Well, I just want to I want to thank you all again, Sarah and Andrew and Matthew and Brooke. It's been amazing hearing about your stories. I wish I could spend all afternoon talking with you and hearing more. And I just appreciate your willingness to share your talents and experiences with our audiences. I think it makes a huge difference. So I'm grateful and looking forward to do more of these with some other folks. Thank you for being our inaugural group here.